It came on. Okay, sorry I'm late. Sometimes, things happen and it takes some time to get through them. Anyway, I'm back working on the Apollo command module, and these are bits of it. I did yesterday get some stuff done. These parts are primed, and some of them are even started some painting. So let me go through. Yeah, this is always a good part of the stream. It's the what I'm going to do part before I actually start doing it. And sometimes I can take a good long time talking about what I'm going to do, and then that means that I don't really have to do it because I didn't get around to it. But anyway, here's some bits. These are the seats for the astronaut, and the painting instructions say paint them light blue. But if you look at the inside of a real, this is like the Apollo 11 capsule, the command module, the thing that returned to Earth. You can see that the seats are not blue. The rest of it really is kind of light blue. This is the color I'm using, which is a little more gray than this, I guess. But it's as close as I could come to this color with the paints I had available to me at the time. So there it is. Anyway, I tested this color, and it's pretty decent. These are the backs of the seats. So since it's pretty decent, it's a little yellower, but not bad, considering that this model is not historically accurate anyway. I'll try to make it as close as I can. So now I have to paint the fronts, which are not that color. So that's just a little bit of painting that needs to be done. This is the heat shield. And the heat shield painting instructions don't say anything about the heat shield. And so I knew that the heat shield was darker than the rest of the capsule because it was filled with a rosin kind of material that ablated away. It burned away, basically, as the capsule re-entered. This model of the heat shield doesn't have anything to do with the real heat shield, other than that the shape, okay? It's got these little prongs on it, which permits the command module to stand without rocking around. I think, okay, so that's sort of clever. And the real heat shield had a very distinct honeycomb texture. It was a metallic honeycomb that was, and each of the cells in the honeycomb were filled with this rosin. And they didn't even attempt to do that. So there it is. The rosin itself was actually kind of, I just looked it up online. They had some pictures of people putting the rosin into the cells. And it was kind of a reddish brown color. But I think it was painted over when it was launched. Anyway, I'm using this kind of brownish color, which is, because the heat shield was not white like the rest of the capsule. So when it goes together, eventually it goes together like this. The heat shield will have at least a little bit of a different color. I'm sort of tempted to paint it a darker color. Something, here's my color chart, something more like this. But I think that, because it's a model and not the real thing, it might actually distract and look kind of weird. So I'm just going to leave it this color. I think it came out okay. So I'm not talking about what I need to do here. I'm talking about what I could potentially do, but I'm not going to. These three bits are interesting. These two are kind of disposable parts of the Apollo. These go on the top of the command module like that. They kind of stack like that. And where these toothpicks are, that's where the escape tower is attached. So after it's launched, the escape tower is jettisoned. It shoots away and breaks up in the atmosphere and lands in the ocean. And then this, once it's in orbit outside the atmosphere, this is jettisoned. Useless piece now. And you can see this. This is where the hatchway, the airlock and hatchway between the command module and the lunar module goes. This goes underneath it and fits inside. This goes. So it does work. I've tested this before. Just needs to be lined up. There we go. And then the hatch is exposed so that the astronauts can climb through it into the lunar module. And then when they come back to Earth, this part is jettisoned, and then this part shows these are the parachutes and the parachute controls. So this stays on the command module. These two parts are going to be painted two colors. The insides of these are going to be painted kind of gray-green, which is like a primer color that was used on the inside of like the service module and the fairing that contains the lunar module. And then the outside is painted sort of a pearlescent white. So I'm going to be I need to do some taping to mask off the outside so I can paint the insides. And then when that's done, that tape comes off, and then the insides are taped up and the outsides are painted. Yay. So the taping needs to be done, mask taping, and I might get around to doing that. I'm talking about what I need to do, so I'm going to get some stuff done in no particular order, probably. These are the parachutes. Okay, there's a lot going on this piece. There's the hatch, the airlock hatch, and that's going to be painted kind of a dark aluminium color. And then the parachutes, the instructions say to paint them brown, but the parachutes are actually orange and white. But I looked it up, and in fact, the covers of the parachutes were brown. They were like the parachute pack. Okay, but there's other stuff on here, and this is actually what this is. So you've got the parachutes. There's 3 of them, right? And then and they actually did some of the detail on this. There's like the things that hold them together, and then there's a bunch of other stuff here. There's a drogue parachute that slows it down first. There's some engine protectors. This is not this, but there's items on here that should be not just painted brown. The painting instructions, they paint it all brown. Well, no, I'm not going to paint it all brown. I'm going to paint the parachute covers brown, and then do some of these other things, maybe in really dark brown or kind of grayish brown with tether lines. Okay. And then some of these mechanical components, I might paint metallic. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to do my best to try. Like there's the spaghetti of piping here. Okay, is represented by these little lines. That's all there is of it. But Yeah, so this is going to require some different colors and detail painting, so that'll be kind of interesting. This is the bottom of the command capsule, and the seats, which are sort of, represented, are actually suspended over that. So there's a space behind it for storage, and to go, astronauts, I think, can even get in there. So there's all of these like conduits and things, and I'm going to paint those a metallic color, maybe more than one. I'll probably paint the boxes one color, and then conduits another. So that's some painting. Yay. Painting here. And then there's the door. This is the door to the command module, and this is the real door. And they did put on the model, some little bits around the edges to represent these locking mechanisms. And all of these kinds of gears and everything are represented by tiny little raised areas. And those are going to be painted in metallic color like that. Paint the hinge pin metallic as well. So there's some teeny teeny painting here, and hopefully I can do that without making a mess. I did succeed with the service module, painting some really fine wires and stuff with metallic color, and that came out okay. Okay, so some taping on these guys, some painting on these guys, some painting on these three things. And then there's this. And I was moving along pretty well on Wednesday. I was going to actually prime this as well. But there's these little antennae that get attached to the sides in these slots. And like most of the small parts on this model, they are very badly done. They don't fit very well. They have circles, the ever-present curse of the circles from the molding process. You can see one there, maybe if it focuses. Yeah. So, instead of just sort of sticking those on and then priming this is another one of those where it's painted blue inside and white outside. So instead of getting it, ready to prime both inside and outside, and then masking it so I could paint the inside, and then masking it so I could paint the outside. Instead of that, I need to mess around with these with some sandpaper, maybe even a file, so that they fit, so that I can attach them. And I want to attach them before I do all of the painting so that it looks like they're a little bit more integrated into the surface of the model. So that's stuff that needs to be done today. And what will I start with? I'll probably finish with putting masking tape on things, because oftentimes after the break, I'm less focused than I should be. I'm actually thinking of starting with the door, with a teeny tiny brush and teeny tiny little bits of paint, trying to highlight the raised metallic areas, these things. Some of these. Eventually, I'll need to cut out the window. There's a little circular piece of plastic that needs to be cut and trimmed and attached, and it has this brown frame around it. So I'm going to try to do that. Actually, I'm thinking when I cut out the plastic for the window, I'm going to paint the frame on it first. Because if I stick it on and then paint the frame and then the paint gets all over the blue paint, then it's a mess that's difficult to fix. But if I paint the frame before I attach it and it messes up, I can just cut out a new one and keep doing that over and over and over and over and over and over until I get one that looks good, and then I'll stick it on. And then I'll probably get some glue all over it and make it opaque, and then I'll have to take it off and start over. It's going to be that kind of thing. So there. We've got some teeny brushes. This part out. If this doesn't go well, like if I get the silver paint on different parts of this where it shouldn't be, I can try to touch it up by spraying a little bit of the blue paint in a container and touching it. Usually it's just like a tiny dot, a really tiny dot that needs to be repaired. If it gets very bad and I mush it, okay, like I slip with the brush and I just get a big streak of the metallic paint on here, I can, I'll just wipe it down and respray it to use this to hold it. Then I have to pick the paint. So I have several options here. I have made a huge mess and can barely maneuver on my work surface. It's getting to the point where I'm going to have to spend maybe 3 hours down here just cleaning up. Seriously, it's really awful. I have chainmail silver. Let me look at my color chart and see what kind of colors I have to work with here. I've got a whole lot of variations of metallics. These metal colors are pretty good, but they're made for airbrushing, so they're very thin, and so they have a tendency to run. Okay, just not stay where they're put. But if there's even a little bit extra, it'll just keep running, and that increases the opportunity for having a mess that needs to be fixed. But chainmail silver is probably actually a good color for this. You can't see it there. This is my color chart. There's that color. Old silver is not too bad. Okay. Actually, this game, looking, these parts are kind of really polished on the door. Okay, they're not like the conduits. So I'm thinking if I can find this silver, game silver. There's model colors and game colors in the series. If I can get the game, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use the chainmail silver on the conduits and stuff on the bottom of the command module. So I'm looking for game silver, and later on I want gunmetal, which is a little darker color, just to create a contrast between. I'm going to contrast between the conduits in these boxes. Reaching over here to where my paints are stored. Okay. Again, I keep saying that I need to show that off. Here it is, game silver. Here's the chainmail silver. And then somewhere else is gunmetal. There. So get them all. I hope this works. We'll see. with my super duper professional palette, into which I squeeze little bits of paint. This, as you can see, this has been used quite a lot, and it's getting to the point where it needs to be tossed. These are sold by the dozen, or maybe even more. I think they're made for like school classes where everybody gets one. They're maybe 10 cents a piece or 15 cents or something. But being as cheap as I am, I just keep using it until it becomes totally unusable. Yeah, I guess I have to start. In order to paint the tiny little pieces on here, I need to be able to see them. It's not just a matter of eye-hand coordination, hoping that I can hold the brush steadily enough to do what needs to be done. And it's also a matter of, in order to coordinate the hand with the eye, I need to be able to see. So I am going to use my head magnifier. Just charging and has a cable wrapped around it. And this has it's one of the more expensive bits that I bought because it was really necessary to have something like this. It's a pretty cool thing. There's different brands of this, but they're all basically the same. There's some magnifying lenses that go on the front, and this one comes with like 4 or 5 different levels of magnification. I have settled on this one. It seems to be the most comfortable, and then it has this little LED light. And that helps too, because then there's extra light on the surface that I'm working on. So no sense burning up the battery. Well, let's just get to it. I will get to it and see how this goes. I am mixing the paint. So we used to just shake the bottles, okay? But it didn't always work very well. When we were painting a lot of dungeon tiles and we were mixing paints that had sat around, we needed to have them, especially the washes, be kind of uniform. Dyson Dungeons invested in this vortex spinner thing, which vibrates, kind of like the paint mixers at a hardware store when you buy a gallon of paint, and mixes the paint better. Some of these need a lot of mixing. So that's one piece of equipment. These head magnifiers are another. And then we invested in a low-cost sort of thing that helps. I don't know if you can hear this little clicking noise. Probably not. This microphone masks almost any noise other than my voice. We bought a bottle of they're like BBs basically, but they go in and they help mix the paint. So like if you buy a spray can of paint and you start shaking it and you start hearing a rattling noise, that's because there's a little metal ball in there that bangs into the pigment that has settled and helps mix it up. So each of these little bottles has a little ball bearing kind of thing that helps mix it up. Okay. Just as the other paint is sometimes too thin and runs all over the place, sometimes this gets really thick and just gums up on the tip of the brush. So, okay, well, the magnifying lens fell out. Hopefully didn't break or scratch. Yeah, clean those. That's a little cleaning cloth in here. So it's going to be that kind of day. If it's going to be that kind of day, and it turns into painting the door disaster, I'm going to do something else on the model that I didn't talk about having to do, which is like prepping the pieces for the control panel. It could have less dire consequences than whatever is going to happen with this. Now you get to see the top of my head, yay. And I get to try to get silver paint parts that I want to be silvered. There, I did. See, I got a little bit of silver paint on the part that I wanted to be silvered. I should just quit now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wouldn't think it, but this takes up 73% of my ability to concentrate. So I tend to get silent while I'm doing this kind of thing. Simple tasks remain simple, but one's ability to do simple tasks is diminished. This brush is working pretty well. There, I think you can see that. One of them is now silvered. See it before. There were some spots on the door where there was a divot, and I filled them in, and I knew that. I knew there would be a difference in texture. And one could hardly see it under, by just looking, but under magnification, the difference in texture becomes obvious. I'm just going to have to live with it. Maybe I'll paint them silver. Yeah, when I put the filler in, it felt a lot better than it does now. So I didn't do it under magnification. So it's sort of a question of whether I want to call attention to them as though they were a flaw. I mean, as though they were intended, or whether I want them just to remain Well, like I said, this takes up almost all of my cognitive ability to pay attention to this. So if I go quiet while I'm doing this, I apologize. It's just requires more focus than one would think. But it's sort of on screen. Hi, Cyrus. Thanks for joining in. I am painting what little detail the model has of the inside of the door of the command module. And the model doesn't have very much detail at all. The real door has a lot more, a lot more stuff on it than the model does. But it's what I'm given. I've said earlier, I think every chat, every stream I've mentioned that this model sort of gives the impression of the real thing and is not at all an accurate representation. Every time I want to do something with it, so I look up historic photographs and things. And it's like, well, this model doesn't quite do that. It's a nice model. It's a really good looking model when it's all put together, but it is not detailed exactly like the real thing. So I'm using a teeny tiny brush with teeny tiny bits of paint to paint these. Are the model's version of the locking mechanisms for the hatch. There were some flaws in the molding process that gave rise to divots on the door. And I'm gonna paint this one. There's hardly any detail on the door. So why not take advantage of the flaw to make it look like it was supposed to be there? Look, that looks okay. I'm gonna do something similar to the one on the top. Poking at it, what's happening is the paint is starting to gum up on the brush. It's not like each one of you got 6 pets. There's maybe 6 in the party and each one got a pet. And an overpowered necklace? Just one necklace. What does the necklace do? Hi, Who. Yeah, maybe you can help out. I think that would be pretty good. Okay, and I will do a flip as soon as I finish the door hinge before this paint becomes unusable. Who has been a DM and probably can give you a hand in chat with the questions that you have. But you usually don't get gifts from a DM like that unless they become a way to, I don't know, to make you do weird things. It's this. Is this? Looks like that's kind of a feature as well. I'm just looking through my head magnifiers and seeing detail here and there. On the paint that I really should fix. Get some paint on the. Maybe I can fix it like this thing. That's not bad. You get a whole bunch of bugs, a dog and a golem. That doesn't. Wow, that's weird. Um, I have no idea. Do you have any idea what could be made of that? Holy cow! That's that is one nasty centipede. Holy, oh man. You really want to be carrying that around with you? What if it's not friendly? Okay. Well, under magnification, this looks a little bit ratty. Your normal view, it actually looks pretty good. So there's the door with some embellishments on it that make it look hardly at all like the real thing. Yeah, it's. I mean, you have that centipede might be the only thing that saves your party, depending on what you run into, or oh my. Okay, I was thinking centipede, but no, we're talking about like a dire centipede. I would say that there's like a 99% chance that your DM is coming up with something that will require you to use that centipede in some fashion. Does it? I know it's friendly to you. Does it? Those are incredibly powerful things. immensely powerful things. I don't know why a DM would just gift you those just to do it. Ooh, do you have any idea what might be going on? This will look better if it had a window with a brown frame around it. I think that would finish it off. Otherwise, it came out and it looks pretty good. Did I miss a spot there? I'm talking to myself. Oh, no, a demon. What level are you guys? It's one thing to face a worm, a great worm, or oh my god. Okay, well, you're definitely going to need this centipede and the golem. Do the beetles do anything? The beetles or the hound? Does the hound have like a howl that? Well, there's nothing handier when facing a demon than a scroll of controlling the demon. Okay, the beetles just might be a distraction. They might. Anyway, yeah, you wouldn't get beetles unless they had some function that you don't know of that maybe you can exploit. 1d4 damage isn't going to do very much against the demon unless the demon is somehow controlled. So you can control the demon, and the centipede can possess another creature. Maybe the idea is to get them to fight against each other. I don't want to speculate too terribly much. Maybe who will, because don't want to ruin the surprise and the fun that will come from that encounter. That's going to be quite an event. Now, being an invisible hound, now that's a horse of a different color, as they might say. Okay, so those beasts and things are all obviously part of a puzzle that some might be a red herring, a useless sort of thing. Um, or I would stay in the back. Wow, you're facing a demon with four hit. Those are supposed to be dials and stuff on the front of that, or whether those are molding flaws. I'm going to pretend that those were intentional, and we'll paint them accordingly. Okay. So the question with this is I've got two different tones of three different tones of silvery paint here. In the past, I have painted the boxes and things lighter than the conduits. But I think this time the boxes are going to be painted darker and the conduits a little lighter. And then I'm going to use the bright silver paint. Yeah, your DM has definitely cooked up something that is going to require you to all very, very cleverly use the gifts that you have been given. And I don't know how, but I hope you don't all die. Hi, it's going pretty well. We're having a conversation with Cyrus about whether the DM is going to murder them all or whether it has given them gifts, or whether the DM has given them gifts that will save them as a character with 4 health points faces a demon. It would be good if the gifts actually saved the party. Anyway, this is the equipment bay at the bottom. Well, being an undead is kind of cool. One of my characters is an undead. Why did you eat a wormling that blinded you? So who? Stay on board. Oh, I never did the flip. Sorry about that. Let me get back to it here. Since we're talking about undeads, do a living or not living? What's that? Well, there were 2 livings and 4 not living, so the undead win. I don't know if this brush is a small brush for detailing. It works this. I'm going to end up spending like an hour painting the detail in this thing. And then it's not going to be visible when the model's put together. I know that that's the case pretty much. The only thing you'll be able to see is a little bit here in the middle. And it doesn't come apart. This part of it at least doesn't come apart. But, you know, this is relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, so why not do some painting? A few parts where there are actual painting directions that say, paint this silver. Okay, well, here we go. IO silver. You've got a long way to go before you're level 11. I am guessing that after this encounter, assuming you survive, that you'll get a level up from your DM. That would only be fair to put you through a battle against a demon. You definitely should get a level. Having a skeleton and a zombie army at your disposal is a very helpful thing. I'm certainly in favor of that happening. Yeah, this paint is pretty thick. It doesn't level very well, so I have to brush out the brush strokes. I was kind of afraid of that. So these boxes are going to be a little bit textured. I don't know what this giant one is all about. I'm thinking that all these little bumps on here are not supposed to represent control panels and stuff. I think they're just flaws in the process, the molding process, like almost everything else is. The fronts of these, they look like they might be dials or something, but I think they're just bumps. Level 20, wow. It got sent, and I can't read all of it. Skyhold? Yeah, the big idea got sent. I'm going to have to figure out how to scroll up on chat, though, because additional chats came through and kind of covered it up. Let me see. Let me see if I can. I'm not sure. I can't even get to the mouse. This is a mess. Here we go. There's a scroll. Oh, there. Okay. I'm just reading it here. I'll read it out loud if people are kind of listening. The world with the elemental crystals, which is a really cool one, and combining it with a separate world, so you have two that you would put together. And Skyhold has floating islands over an endless void. You definitely do not want to fall off the islands. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you really like, nope, I got it. I was able to scroll down to it or up to it, so I was able to see it. I actually think that's a pretty cool idea, is to combine the two worlds. That way you have, in your game, you'll have the feature of both. I'm definitely in favor of you trying that. How would transport work between the floating islands and the surface? Would you as characters be able to go from one to the other? I have to get a bigger brush to do the tops of these. The little brush just leaves way too many brush marks. It looks crappy. Sorry. My version of a naughty word. This is a PG rated stream here. No, that makes sense too. That by combining them, you provide an explanation for some of the other features of your world, it does make it more complicated. So as a DM and as players, it will take longer to explore the world, but I think that's okay. Like in our campaign, the Dice and Dungeons campaign, it's set in an entire planet basically. I don't know if we are. Yeah, it is. I mean, the world we're in is an entire planet, and we've so far explored just only very small parts of it. So there's no reason not to do that. I don't think that that's a problem. You know, if you've got a floating world, okay, you've got these floating islands up there, and they've developed it at a different pace and a different culture. In fact, it might be depending on where your characters developed. You know, if they were all on the land, if they were all on, the surface of the planet, and that was, the world that they knew, if they somehow came in contact with Skyhold, just the encounter between two very different levels of technology could make for very interesting gameplay and role playing. I actually think that would work pretty well. That's not a problem at all. That's actually kind of a good thing. Yeah. Seriously, that would introduce a whole new element of gameplay for your players. Is to discover this and to try to come to terms with it. That would be kind of fun. So I don't see a problem with that at all. I think that's a feature, not a bug. So you'd have kind of a medieval culture, surface of the planet, much more advanced technologically advanced in Skyhold. Okay, that's pretty funny. Skyhold is advanced enough that they're essentially contemptuous of the surface dwellers, and even though they're in a very advanced civilization, they just dump their trash. Like sailing ships. Up until fairly recently, cruise ships and sailing ships and stuff, transport ships and whatever, just dump their trash in the ocean. It was like, what do we do with all this garbage? I don't know. Let's put it in the water. What could go wrong? What would be even better if just make a suggestion, is that instead of them being like meteors or something, the trash actually contained sometimes usable components of technology. And so just these mysterious, technologically advanced bits come falling out of the sky. And people have no idea where they're coming from or why. Well, that's fine. So they don't have to be contemptuous. They just have to be oblivious. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, so some of it could burn up and be like meteorites, and some of it could just be mysterious and usable stuff that falls from the sky at some point. your party might get curious about what is this stuff? Where is it coming from? Are they gifts of the gods? You know, that kind of thing. What kind of stuff can happen in game? I'm tempted to paint that thing a different color, like red, maybe. I don't think it can be seen, but I'm actually going to do that. I'm gonna paint that dark red. Why not? Yeah, I test fit these pieces together, and almost all of what I'm painting now is not going to be visible. This one practically breaks the model apart. So this is, I'm guessing in the scheme of things, this is not a good use of my time. But, you know, the stuff is modeled. There's painting instructions that say paint all these things silver. Mostly on camera. We're having a really interesting conversation about a pretty complicated and interesting world that someone has put together for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I like the idea of the floating world, and I like the idea of them jettisoning their garbage. And sometimes it's just garbage, and sometimes it's a miracle, a gift from the gods. Maybe that's how it's interpreted on the surface. And I think it would be okay. I think it would be okay if the people up in Skyhold knew about the surface. I mean, they know they're above something, probably. But yeah, at some point, way in the future, after you've dealt with the gifts from the gods and the trash and everything else that comes falling down, um, why not have an unintended visitor? But that could probably, like you said, that would be much later in the game. No, it's not rude at all. Um, the only way they would become aware of the Skyhold place, and it's a fair way to become aware of it. My light go out? No, okay, it's just aimed wrong. No, they shouldn't know about it. They should know that stuff falls from the sky, and sometimes it seems like garbage, and sometimes it seems like a miracle. And it's up to them to speculate about where it's coming. But there's no need to reveal the existence of this world to them other than through the stuff that falls until much later in the campaign when you want them to become aware of it through the unintended visitor idea that you have. It's good to have mysteries in the game. Things are happening, you don't know what or why. The unpredictably, episodically falling stuff I think that's actually pretty clever. And then your players can make of your players can make of that what they will. You know, they might ignore it. They might be intrigued by it. Just be prepared that the reaction of your players will have to determine what, if anything, they learn about Skyhold. They might totally ignore it and it never just becomes a part of the game. They might become fascinated by it. They might like start collecting pieces, searching for them all over the world where they might have landed. Or when you actually introduce them to the existence of this place, you know, you can kind of play it by ear, so to speak, uh, based on the actions of your players. That's happened in our game with some frequency. Is DM puts something into the game that we don't know about, and usually on a smaller scale, like it's a special room in a dungeon or something. But we either discover it or we don't. And whether we do or don't, it could be trivial. You know, it's like we find some silver coins or something, or it could be dramatic, like we find a whole new environment, a whole new civilization. Yeah, so they're not enthusiastic about playing. No, get yourself ready. You know, the time might come when they're ready for a game, and you'll have one ready for them. And if nothing else, you know, you're using your creative talents, right? Putting this all together, and maybe you'll end up using it, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll look back at it and redo the whole thing. It's like people writing a novel and they get halfway through it and decide that the whole plot is not working and they start over. If you've got 3 games going, adding another one to the mix is probably exhausting. Yeah, I have to agree with your friends there. But it's going to take you a while to get this all put together. So start plugging away at it. But the floating world kind of thing, you know, the mysterious floating world that sometimes casts things down onto the surface of the planet. That's a cool thing. And like I said, depending on your player's reaction, it might turn into like the majority of the gameplay, or it might just turn into nothing. You don't know how the players are going to react. So you have to be kind of open to whatever comes of it. You're traveling. Um, you might be getting too complicated by adding too many things. But it would be good if it made sense to come from Skyhold, it wouldn't complicate things, right? I'm just going to use this really big brush across the top of this piece. It's going to have brush marks on it regardless because the paint is pretty viscous, but at least it'll be fast. Painting with the little brush would have taken forever. This way it's not taking forever. It's going okay, and then I messed it up. This is a just leave well enough alone situation. Looks like I just need to put a second coat on this a little later. We'll see how it looks when it dries. Right now, it doesn't look good. Keep messing with it. Every time I mess with it, it doesn't get any better. It's the other metallic. No, that'll be what it will be in a bit. There's plenty of time to come back to that because I have to paint all the conduits yet. I'm not sure how that would work. Can you explain that more? If you have a character exploring the world, yeah, that is that is a way of doing it. It's like Robinson Crusoe and other similar sorts of things where the character, the main character, is describing what's going on. How would that work in a DM in a D&D game though? Because if you have an NPC character that is yours as the DM, how will that? Okay, well, I'm going to have to fix this later. How will that happen? Because basically you make up a world and your players explore it, but it's unusual to have like the DM basically explore it. If you're writing a story, though, I understand now. It's the technique you were using to define your world by acting as though you as writer were the character that's discovering the world. No, that's a really good idea. It gives you a realistic view of exploration. I think that's a pretty cool way to do it. I don't know if it has a name. Yeah, that's something I have to express complete ignorance about. But I think it's a really interesting way to imagine a world is to imagine yourself and discovering it, encountering it, and moving through it. Mixing up this third color. This is chainmail silver, and this is the color I'm going to use for all the conduits on here. Am I using up a lot of time? Yes, that's good. Using up a lot of time is good because I'm doing this. This is going to take even yet more time because there's a lot of them. And they have these brackets holding them down. just so I can do yet even more unnecessary detail painting. I'm going to come back and paint all of those brackets. Probably not black. Okay, because black, it was this dark gray paint that actually looks like a better black than black. I want them to look kind of like, sort of like rubber straps or something. Kind of weird that the model designers here spent more time putting detail, maybe even historically accurate detail, I'm not sure, on parts of the model that are pretty much invisible when it's put together. That they spent more time doing that than detail on areas that are very, very obvious. I don't know. I'm not sure. Sometimes these models give the appearance of being designed by a group of people that never communicate. Okay, that happened with the submarine model too. People is told, go out there and design the control room, and another group was told, go out and design the torpedo room, and another one was told, go ahead and make these parts now. They didn't communicate, and so they just weren't, the level of detail and the way they were molded and stuff, it was all just incompatible with each other. Just gives a very odd impression of the process they used. You rusty at writing? You don't have to think of it as writing. You can think of it as you exploring the world, and maybe like keeping a diary. That's almost the impression that technique gives, is that you're writing a journal of your explorations, and it doesn't even have to be well composed. It's your journal. Sometimes you use an abbreviation. Sometimes you write in a lot of detail. Sometimes you don't, depending. Sometimes you get frightened by what you've discovered and your writing gets fragmented. So instead of worrying about, yeah, there you go, is imagine yourself in your world and then keep a journal. The important part is to capture the important details of what it is that you have discovered. I did test fitting on this to get some idea of what was visible and what wasn't, and It's no real knowing. It was hard to hold it together, because all the pieces were just kind of flopping around. I'm painting, as nice. That was eventually going to happen. I just smashed the brush into my finger. I got paint all over one of my fingers that I hope I will avoid touching to a totally painted surface. I'll look up again in a bit. I need to get this part of the conduit painted. These brackets are nice detail, holding the conduit down. They are a pain to paint around. There we go. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining in on chat. And it's always interesting talking with people about their ideas. But yeah, journaling, just a jot and a sentence, who knows? Sometimes you'll go on and on for a long, like pages, because you get into something. But thanks for joining in, and maybe we'll see you again next week. But, like we talked about, if you just do something, even 30 minutes a day, eventually it'll get done, just like these models. That eventually they get done. So thanks for joining in on chat, and we'll see you next week. To be honest, if you're watching this on YouTube, unless you're watching the chat window, you wouldn't know what was going on. So I'm hoping that's, if anybody's watching, that they might find the conversation interesting. Then maybe even have some ideas that would be helpful. It's not too bad if I could. I know I'm painting so that I can actually paint, but then it's not. All you do is you're not seeing it. So I'm going to try to hold the piece so you can actually see that paint is going on a surface. I also have to hold it so that I can actually paint it. This is a compromise situation here. Back, I've noticed I've spent most of my time this week, after I've gotten back to the Apollo, complaining about the Apollo model. All of those complaints being fully justified by the I ran into trying to get this thing together. The detail on the floor of the command module is one of the more bizarre things in the model. That is barely visible and probably, like everything else, not historically accurate. But it is painting, and this is supposed to be relaxing painting, so unusually for this model, there is actually painting going on. kind of stunningly odd. Taking advantage of the opportunity to do what is probably pointless detail painting to do painting on the stream. Irregardless. Irregardless. Is irregardless the same as regardless? Is that one of those weird words like flammable and inflammable? It means the same thing, but they should be the opposites. Famous and infamous are not the same things. So why are flammable and inflammable? That's one of the mysteries of the oddities of the English language. Doesn't make sense. Of course it doesn't. Just live with it. Why is it that way? We don't know. It just is. Let's live with it. That's why learning English, as a first language is a huge advantage compared to learning it later. Because, when you're a baby, or even like a first or second grader, and you start running into all these things that don't make any sense, you don't know any better, and you just learn them as though, well, that's just the way it is. As opposed to, if you learned a rational language, which didn't have exceptions to every rule, so why bother having a rule? Yeah, it becomes really difficult because none of it makes any sense. And you say, well, this doesn't make sense. And you go, yeah, well, it doesn't, and it's not going to. So it's just the way it is. Learning nonsense as a child is just much easier because you have against which to compare it. Take their English. Well, yeah, just to put my foot asleep by posturing it in a certain uncomfortable way. Lovely. It's coming along though. See, it actually looks pretty decent, at least at a distance, which is how it needs to be observed. There's no question. I've said that things should not be, my model should not be viewed under a bright light because then the flaws would become more obvious. But this particular component, that's not going to be an issue unless you get like a really bright LED pen light or something and shine it on it because it's underneath the seats in the command module. And there's no light down there. And like I said, unless you put on your 2x head magnifiers and shine a really bright light in, you're not going to be able to see this very well at all. That's why I can question, am I even doing this? But the answer is, it's occasionally important to have painting going on during relaxing painting on Dice and Dungeons. Otherwise, people would say, why do you call it relaxing painting? Dice and Dungeons, there's never any painting. This way, it's possible to say, yes, there is. Of course, there's painting. On Friday, whatever the date is, the 20th or something, There was painting, pointless painting, but painting nonetheless. And it's and painting that's going okay. Going okay painting. I shouldn't have said that, because now as I'm getting to the last conduit, right, this is where it's going to not be okay. Beginning of this stream, I was talking about the things I was going to do and how the parts of this model have just a passing resemblance sometimes to the real thing, like the door to the command module that I painted at the beginning of the stream. Okay, well, there. That's an example of things not going okay. Because I said things were going okay. I expected the problem to have been, and it may still be, that I brush something and make a mess of it. But this particular problem is that I bumped my head. Okay, I'm just going to, I'm going to go harumph here. We haven't had a harumph moment in this stream, but I am now. There's two harumphs. One is I bumped my head magnifier against the Ring camera and knocked the lenses onto the floor for the second time today. Not in the same way each time, a uniquely different way each time. But so there was that. And the other is that there's some sort of probably cat hair or something. I got onto one of these painted surfaces, and what I need are the tweezers, which are in a box, which I put somewhere else, so it was out of the way, that I can't find now. Oh, there it is. That's another lesson, is if you complain about it enough, your tweezers reappear. They're in here. Good grief. Okay. I'm going to wander around. You're going to just see me looking around here for the tweezers, which should have always been right here, which is where I put them when I put them away. But they're not where I put them away. And they're not in the other place where I would ordinarily put them if I were putting them away. Okay. So there it is. I complained loudly enough, long enough, that one of them spontaneously appeared in a place where I never put them. Have that sigh in a while. It feels good to give that, just do that sigh. Really. I'm squeezing out some fresh paint here because that big blob that I put out earlier is now just a waste of paint because it got too gummy. The solvent evaporated enough so that the paint is kind of unusable. Well, you can tell it's getting time for a break because even the paper towels are sticking to my hands. And yeah, I hadn't had a good crump all practically the entire stream. So let's get that out of the way. I'm going to finish painting this bit of conduit. Take a break, but before break, to talk about what I'm going to do after break. And then I might remember when I get back from break what I said I was going to do after break. Find out if I remember that or not. But I do know that after I get back from break, I will be doing something. What it is, it'll be like a selection from a drop-down menu, because there's things that need to be done, and it will depend on how things are going, which of them I end up doing. Well, I can kill two birds with one stone here. I can talk about those things while I am painting. It's like operating in parallel rather than in series. It's like walking and chewing gum at the same time, which I actually can't do. I actually can't do that because I have these caps on my front teeth. It's another story about why, but gum sticks to them. So I haven't been able to chew gum now for over 50 years. And as a result, I actually can not walk and chew gum at the same time. I've never considered that to be a real liability, though. It's like, okay, so you think you're so smart you can walk and chew gum at the same time, and I can't. It's just la-di-da, fancy you. So I wasted time talking about that instead of talking about what I need to do after break. After break, there's this one bit back here I'm going to be painting a different color. And you put a second coat. Looks like it would look better if I put a second coat of this dark silver on this box, because it's too wavy. It doesn't look good. So I'm going to do that and probably brush across in the other direction. They'll be able to see the brush strokes, but not terribly much. No, I'm not going to try to fix those. I'm going to take the time to paint all these brackets a dark gray color, because they're there and they really should be a different color than the actual pipes themselves. So as far as this goes, the second coat of the dark silver color, chainmail silver, on these boxes, they're in front. You'll be able to see those. Painting this thing back here, they probably won't be able to see a different color just to do it. And then painting the brackets on all of these conduits. Okay. So as far as this goes, that will happen. Those things need to happen after break. So there's still a fair amount of work to be done on this. And then depending that there are other things that really must be done. One is to start painting the detail on basically the parachute containment device and this hatch. I'm going to paint this with one of the metallic colors because I want it to sort of match the one on the lunar module. And then I've got these little bitty antenna things that need a lot of sanding and fitting and need to be attached to these slots on the command module. That actually is kind of a priority because the work on the command module can't happen without that. Actually, doing some taping on these little bits so that I can paint the insides of them this light blue color, that's kind of a priority too, because those need to be painted before I can paint the outside. So I'm not sure what I'll be doing in what order. Okay, but those are things that could happen that could likely happen after break. I'm thinking at this point that getting these little antenna bits on here might be the top priority, because that's going to hold up a lot of stuff if it's not done. If I can't get those on, then I can't paint this. It has to be painted, primed first, taped, painted inside and then outside. And then windows need to be installed, but none of that other stuff can happen until those are on and I get the painting done. The major work, there's a lot of work to be done on the control panels, the door window. Yeah, there's stuff to be done. I'm likely to, because this can kind of wait, I'm likely to get this done with the antenna and get the painting on the nose cones, not the painting, the taping on the nose cones done so that those can be painted on the inside over the weekend. But I need to take a break. A little bit early, but it's a good time. I'm waiting for this paint to dry. Yeah, it is a little bit early, so I'm not going to take a break right away. I'm going to put the second coat of this on. It'll take just a couple of minutes and get me closer to typical break time. But then I will need to take a break, and I'll be back, and then I'll be starting to do more stuff. There. I'll keep it ambiguous. I'm going to do more model stuff on the model when I get back from break. Yeah, see, this is just a real quick kind of thing to hopefully somewhat improve the appearance of these parts. So, I could paint the brackets, second guessing myself, so let me do that. I could paint the brackets on all the conduits this darker metallic color. On the service module, the painting instructions actually said to paint those like a brass or a bronze color. And that worked out okay, but I don't see under here why that would be the case. I think to make a contrast with all the metallic, that painting them kind of a dark grayish brown, a dark grayish color, almost black, would look okay. I'm just going to leave all this stuff laying here, messily in the way. Let this all dry. Okay. I'm going to line these up this order. Okay. And then taping these things so that I can paint the insides of them. And then on Monday, what I'll be doing is untaping them, and retaping them so I can paint the outsides. Wonderful. And on Monday, I'll be working on this bit here, which is going to take a fair amount of work to make it look okay. These are the parachute covers and the drogue chutes and controls and stuff for the parachute harnesses and the access hatch between the LEM and the command module. So I'm not going to get to this today. So on Monday, I'll be doing this and probably take almost the entire stream at the pace I work. Today, I hope to get this done and the taping done. This is going to be the thing that's going to make me sigh and grump. I am going to be grumpy doing these little bits. And then I'll finish the brackets on the conduits with a color that I'll select. And then this is the door. Okay, it doesn't look too bad. It will look better with the window on it. At some point relatively soon, I'll cut out little circles. I'm going to just cut out little circles and paint the rims brown like this. And if I get one right, I'm going to try to attach it to the door. And then yeah, I need to paint the outside of the door yet, which means I need to tape the inside of the door. Be easier. I might wait to install the window. I very well may end up waiting to install the window until I paint the outside. So this is another thing to be taped. The outside is painted like a pearlescent white, but it's easy to put a piece of tape across this. Okay, maybe you should see it. This is painted pearlescent white, and I tape around the edges because the edges are like this bluish color. But if I put the window in, I have to mask the window. But if I don't put the window in, I can just put a little piece of masking tape behind it and spray paint it and then put the window in later. So I'm putting this here with the to be taped stuff. And then on next week, I'll be trying to make the window. That'll be an interesting thing because I have to cut a perfect circle out of this plastic with inadequate scissors and paint the edges of it to make it look like a rim. Okay, break time. Little antenna things that will be difficult and annoying to put on. Doing some taping so I can do some spray painting of the insides of these, or in this case, the outside. And then painting, if there's still time left, the little brackets that hold on the conduits on the base of this. And then painting one of those things red. Okay, I will be back. I always say 30 minutes and then it's 40. I won't lie to you. I'll be back sometime a little bit later, but I will be back to do this stuff. See you then. Yep, I'm back. Just thought I would turn the camera on, just, so break ended before I got here. Well, that got twisted around probably when I banged my head into it. So to recap the stuff that I need to do in more or less the sequence that makes sense from an assembly point of view is these little antennae need to be attached to these little slots here. They don't fit. They're a real mess. They've got molding circles on them. Just, typical thing that I get to complain about. And then these bits, the insides of these need to be painted this blue. The outside's pearlescent, or in this case, a lot of detail. But I do not want to paint these blue. These two need to be gray-green. This needs to be blue. And then the outside of this pearlescent, so there's different colors. Good thing I said that out loud because, I would have painted these the wrong color and that would have been bad. So anyway, I need to mask these so that I can paint the insides or the outside in this case. And then mask these again so I can paint the outside after the inside is painted. If that made sense. And then there's some detail work left on the bottom of the command module. But until this is done, I can't really even prime this, which is the body of the command module. So let's do some sanding and filing here. looks to me, I hope that's just flashing. Yeah, it is. Okay. Sometimes these little parts are, they're injection molded, and the two sides of the molds don't line up. In this case, they kind of don't. So this looked like flashing, where the plastic oozed out between the two sides of the mold, but it also is, a lack of alignment. This side's not too bad. It's flat. This side has one of these molding circles on it. I need to sand that out. And then there's some plastic that's stuck to the bottom of this and this that keeps it from sitting in there correctly. So they're little pieces. I really should work over a box. Okay, there's a reason for that. Working over a box, there is a reason for that, because if I drop one of these, it drops into the box and not on the floor, because if it drops on the floor, I might not be able to find it. If it's in a box, I likely will. I'm just going to use this. No, I mutter to myself. I have nice smaller boxes that I can use, but they're elsewhere. Well, here, let me just use this. This is the box that's full of files and sandpaper and stuff. And I'm just going to, it doesn't matter if I get dust in there because it's already full of dust. So here. So essentially, I am going to be trying to get these parts cleaned up, and then I'm going to cement them on once I get them to fit and look good. I can file this because this is the part that is actually cemented onto the command module. And so if it has file marks on it, that doesn't much matter because it's definitely not going to show. But the rest of this is just horrible. And as I said, sometimes this model, as with some others, like the submarine, the smallest parts are the ones that are the most poorly formed, making just little bits of manipulation with tiny bits of sandpaper and fingers that don't necessarily work that well. I'm going to try to get rid of the misalignment. Okay, and I can feel it. There's definitely a big ridge there. I'm going to try to get rid of the misalignment issues first. Now, right after break, I get the signal. I've got an important phone call that's supposed to come in. That was supposed to come in while I was on break. With you. Yep. Perfectly bad timing. Sorry. Oh, there it is. I was missing the other one. Yeah, so just really annoying sanding and filing here while I try to get these parts. It doesn't look like much, the little ridge that comes from the two halves of the mold not being aligned. But when they are painted a glossy color, or like a semi-gloss color, which is what they will be, it is really obvious and not good. So, yeah, just not nearly as bad as the bracket for some of the attitude control jet rockets on the LEM. The bracket could have been molded as one piece, but it wasn't. It was molded as two. And one half was a different size than the other half. And so the whole process of getting them to look like they sort of belong together, it was, it ended up looking okay, but clearly not the way it was supposed to. The top here, there's some sort of little notch. Excuse me. Just this happens all the time after break. I come down and my nose starts to drip. Yeah, the only good thing about this is that the plastic is relatively soft, and so even very fine grained sandpaper like this, like 800 grit or 600 grit, depending on which one I grabbed, does seem to work fairly quickly. But it shouldn't have to be done at all. And I'm just running a fingernail over it because it's white on white. Sometimes that is a more accurate way of telling if I got the ridge out than by looking at it. Yeah. And I'm attaching these before priming and painting because they'll just look like they're more continuous parts of the model as opposed to just slapped on later. Also, priming and painting something this small, more often than not, will well, it's just hard to do without marring it. Okay, I'm going to see if this fits now. Excuse me, the flat part of this, even on the flat part of this here, you can see it is supposed to be flush against the side of the capsule. And this is just an alignment tab. And it does. That's good. See if it does on the other side too. Okay, well, that part's good. That means I can cement it in. And it's not perfectly round anymore. I need to now, if I can even hold on to it, and it's hard, is this circle. You can see it. It's one of those molding circles that show up on these things that are not supposed to be there. But is, and the only way to get rid of it is to sand down the entire surface so that the circle doesn't show anymore. Yeah. Sometimes it happens quickly, and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it's moving fairly quickly, but it goes right down to the border there. And the sandpaper should be getting into that. Well, I've got it on the sanding block. I'm going to have to take it off and do it by hand. I might even have to file that little bit sometimes to get into those itsy bitsy little 90-degree angles. Let's see if I can do it with the sandpaper. Seems to be coming along. Well, one of these is now presentable. Wasn't before. like to show you the contrast with the other one. Kind of hard to do. But you can see, the one on this finger has flashing showing. It's got the circle. It's got a misalignment on the sides. So that's what comes of tedious sanding and filing, is that the part doesn't look gross anymore. And actually has a chance of fitting. Wow, this one is really misaligned. There's a big bulge of plastic there. Excuse me. It is. I don't know what it is. The whole basement here, the workshop, feels colder after the break. My nose starts to drip, and then that causes postnasal drip, which causes a cough. One more thing. Well, let me see if this fits before I start messing with the rest of it. Okay. Yeah, that'll do. So now I can work on the outside of it. Yeah, this isn't painting, but it is necessary before some other spray painting, and then eventually some brush painting is done. I need to paint this. There's just a lot of. If I was any good at an airbrush, I would be doing it with an airbrush, because just a lot of little colors, and it's way less expensive than buying spray paint. But I am useless with a hairbrush. I mean, I'm beyond bad. I am making a mess that takes hours to clean up. I don't know. I do not know why I can't do it. But I do know that I can't, or at least I couldn't. I haven't tried it recently. The experience was so distressing that I just didn't even try anymore. But probably will need to really to, I mean, even there, well, we're not going to get into a whole lot of that. There's a lot of the model that if I were a supreme master modeler, instead of applying paint with a brush, I would be masking off little bits of it and airbrushing it, because then I wouldn't have brush marks. But this is, well, we'll just say that we'll say this is, how do you make models look kind of okay if you don't have an airbrush? So far, there's nothing that I've been using on this stream that's really very expensive. So if people don't want to invest a whole lot of money but still have models that look pretty good, the stuff I'm doing on this stream could be helpful. Like, buy spray paint, and you don't have a choice of as many colors as if you used an airbrush and thinned your own paint and everything. But you can match, come close to what you need almost all the time. You don't need a vortex spinner thing that we use for mixing the paint. Just shaking it works fine. Worked fine for me for years and years. I would recommend investing in those little ball bearing things, though, that you put into the paint jar to help break up the this residual little circles is remaining. So weird. Yeah, to just help mix up the pigment with the paint, and that's not very expensive. You want to get pretty decent brushes, but but you don't have to buy real expensive brushes. You want to make sure you get like some 10-0 brushes, really fine, and you can buy inexpensive ones. And if you're not using them like 24/7, they should last for a while. Sandpaper is not very expensive, but sometimes it's hard to find the really fine stuff. Okay, hardware stores don't usually carry 600, 800, 1200, 2000 grit papers, and you want stuff that is 600 and finer, really, when you're manipulating these. Otherwise, you end up with scratch marks all over the surface of the model. And you want some that are really fine, like 1200 or finer for final polishing some of the surfaces. So these, I don't know, I could look at them under the 2x magnifier, but I'm not going to get that compulsive about it. I just want them, if I'm looking at them, I want them to look okay. I don't expect people who are looking at this model to be carrying around magnifying glasses and inspecting it at that level. If they are, they will be very disappointed and weird at the same time. I mean, why would you come up to somebody and say, "Oh, let me look at your model. Oh, that's pretty cool. Let me pull out my magnifying glass to see if you did a really good job or not." That would be kind of insulting. So, once these are done, since I have no place to display them whatsoever, they're probably just going to lay in a box somewhere, or maybe just under some paper towels or a cloth or whatever to keep the dust off. So I'm not really too concerned about this, people coming up with a bright light and a magnifying glass, checking the fine detail of the model. Okay, why did it look good just a moment ago? I think these will be okay. Excuse me. Yeah, need to take care of this. Sorry, I really need to do that. Yeah, I need to attach those. So what cement should I use? Use this. This should work. Let me put one on. I'm going to put a little cement in the divot here. If I'm using cement, I like to put it in the indent so that when I push down something on it, like this, if I put it on here, if I put it on the edge and I missed, which is quite possible for me, it would end up like there and mar the surface. If it's already where I want it, then it might squish out a little bit, but it's not going to splash all over everything. So that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to stick out like that. And if that holds, I'm going to just hold it for like 30 seconds or, a time like that. And I didn't get any in my fingers. That's good. With the old tube cement, just would use a toothpick or something to try to apply this, but would almost certainly get some on one's fingers. And then almost certainly something like that. Why is there? I have acquired dust. I quietly count to myself to 30. Pressure. In the old days, that used to be something that worked. Putting it under pressure helped the welding process. If that still matters or not, but I'm doing it. Okay, well, they're not falling off, which means that there's enough adhesion there so that they're not falling off. Ta-da! That's done, which means now that over the weekend I can prime this inside and out. And then on Monday, I can tape the outside, mask the outside, I should really say. It's the more accurate way of putting it. I can mask the outside so I can spray paint the inside light blue. And then, like Wednesday, I can take the mask off and then mask the inside so I can spray the outside the pearlescent white. So I'm going to put this here. Yuck. I should keep a separate box for finished parts and unfinished, but this is ready to be primed on both sides. This is ready to be painted this color. This color on this side. This is the side that shows and needs to be painted. It fits. This is the orientation that it has, and then little astronaut figures sit in these seats. So that can be painted. These need to be masked so that the insides can be painted, as I now reminded myself, different colors. These two are painted the gray-green color to match the primer color on a lot of the insides of parts. And this shows on the inside of the command module, so it needs to be painted light blue. My filling in of the gaps on this, because the spots were so small that the surface texture difference didn't matter. It worked out pretty well. There were little gaps here and here and a little tab there, and those are now mostly disappeared. So that's good. So this is going to be masking, which means this stuff can go away somewhere else. Get some scissors. Pushing things out of the way instead of very carefully moving them somewhere. Yeah, masking circular things, curves, is kind of a pain. I want the edge to be painted that blue-green kind of color. Not blue-green. I can never say it right. The gray-green color. Okay. And so I'm just going to mask up to, see that, just like right up to and a little bit over the edge. So that the paint will go on the edge, but not over it. And then the main concern here is making sure that, like here, I don't know if you can see it, but the tape kind of rolled over and covered the edge a little bit. So when I painted this, I want to make sure that the masking tape doesn't, excuse me, cover the edge. And when it sticks up a lot like that, I'm going to just even trim it a little bit, because the more there is of it, the more likely it is that it could just be pushed down over. It's not a huge deal, because it would end up being just a really tiny spot. on the edge that no one would ever notice, but I would know it was there. Then I'm just going to do it. I'm doing it the cheap way, the cheap and easy way, because square pegs don't go in round holes. I'm just going to let the masking tape go over the edge and trim it off rather than trying to form it like I did this, where it's all wrinkly. Just let it go around the edge and then trim it. That was faster. Yay. And just as effective. A little bit of the paint from the inside gets onto the outside. Right now, that's not a big problem because I can just scrape it off before I paint the outside white. But it would have to come off because if the darker paint shows up on the outside, the pearlescent that I use is a little bit translucent, and the darker color would show through it. And that would, well, that would mean that it would look like there was a dark spot where there shouldn't be. So that's why I'm painting the darker color first so that I can scrape it off. Masking this to paint the outside is pretty easy. I just mask on the edge. And you'll see that next week when I remove this mask and put on the new mask. And then it will be done. The little nose cone thing will be done. See it completed on Wednesday of next week. In the meantime, I am sticking my fingers where I shouldn't, and I'm pushing the tape down around the edge where I shouldn't. Just like I said, I don't want to do that. I've been doing it. Yep. It's relaxing, minor oopsing with Dyson Dungeons, and it just so happens that put enough tape on that the entire outside is masked. So I don't have to add more. Okay, well, I'll check that before I paint it when the time comes. And the same thing will be done here. I'll be masking all around the outside and then covering it up. And you say, why are those little toothpicks there? Well, those little toothpicks are there to keep paint from getting in these holes. Because if the paint got in the holes, then the tiny little pegs from the escape module wouldn't fit. And this will probably work better if I took them out now and put them in again later, but I'm going to be lazy. Watch me be lazy, and I'm just going to tape around them. Unless it really gets annoying, in which case then I'll take them out. Same thing here. I want the edge to be painted what will be in this case, the gray-green color. And then the outside will be painted pearlescent white. Masking looks like it's like a really easy, straightforward thing, but I found that it kind of isn't, because it's not so much on here, but there are sometimes when you're masking tiny little details to keep from different colors from covering each other. When somebody who's really good at building models probably spends like half of their life masking. Did I leave it? Why? All I needed to do was line these things up, right? And I didn't, and I left a little gap in the mask there. But yeah, probably spends almost all of their time masking because they'll use their airbrush all the time, and so they'll put on one color, maybe like the conduits or something, and then mask over the conduits and then spray the rest. That kind of detail work, and I haven't tried to do that, mainly because I can't use an airbrush. If I did, then I'd be spending more time on this stream masking than I do now. But I did discover that masking like this, which I never did as a kid when I was building models, mainly because I didn't even have spray paints, much less an airbrush. Okay, so masking never really became an issue. Masking does not work that well with with when you brush on paints. I've tried it. I mean, I can't say that it doesn't work or that you can't make it work, but it really works best with aerosol, either an airbrush or spray paints. With brush paint, it just, when you're doing little stuff, little detail, if you're painting a wall, that's one thing, right? Put a roller over the masking tape and you get your stripes and whatever. And that pretty much works. But when you're doing little detail, where a spot of paint in the wrong place just becomes really obvious, which it does on some components of these models. I tried it a couple of times, like on the engine room of the submarine that I built last year, that I finished up in March. Okay, there were pipes on the floor, so I painted the pipes, and then I masked them because I wanted a nice clean edge between the pipes and the floor. Right, so I masked them, and I got the mask on there really well. But then after I brushed the paint on, it gave me a ragged edge. I was really disappointed in how it turned out. And so I ended up just having to paint it freehand, and it turned out okay. I mean, I did an okay job with it, but the thing I discovered is that it doesn't work as well. I managed to push the tape down onto the surface. Again, the kind of thing that would be mostly invisible, because for the most part, you wouldn't be taking this part off unless you're playing with the model. And I'm going to discourage playing with this when it's done. I might demonstrate it once on the stream about how all the parts fit together and come apart. But some of them are just too fragile to mess with. Okay, so this is masked, and I seem to have, done okay with it. And again, this is, I'm trying to do this in a sequence so that errors are not fatal. And so putting the dark paint on the inside, and if it gets onto the outside, I can just scrape it off. And then it won't show through the white. And the masking of the inside is pretty straightforward. It's just, right on the edge surface. At least I'm saying that, and I hope it's true. I should mask. You just never know where spray paint is going to go. Just don't know. So I'm going to mask this as well, right over the top. There we go. And just to push it down on there. That's one of the things I try to remember to do before I actually paint it, is like, especially like this, where the tape can roll over the edge, is to go around it, make sure it's adhering to the edge, right on up to the edge, and then peel it back where it's like rolled over. There was a little, okay, so there's that. I don't know, paint could get in there. It shouldn't, but it could. So waste a little masking tape and cover that up. Okay, so this is ready now to be painted gray-green. So remember that. Pull it out. I don't have that paint handy. Gray-green. This will be fun. I mean, I think I'm going to end up actually having to hold this with a gloved hand because it's cone-shaped and it's very light. And if I spray paint it, it's going to go flying around. Yeah. And if I just let it lay like that, I won't be able to get the edges. Okay, this is going to be painted light blue on the inside. So it's the same thing, getting the tape wrapped around it and then masking it all around the outside here. I was going to start painting this today, but I'm glad I didn't, because again, if this paint escapes the mask and gets on the surface, it's not that big a deal because I'm going to be painting it. Oh, there's a thing, this little notch. I need to be sure to get the tape into that notch, because that's a place where the paint can escape and get all over the surface above it. Pushing it down like that. I'll probably get a toothpick so I can push it in a little bit better. Maybe just the edge of the file here has a nice 90-degree angle there. It may not be perfect, but it will keep most of the paint out. And then this gets painted a different color anyway. Okay, so I've got a little spot here and a little spot there. So if you decide to do modeling, I'd encourage you, if you're going to buy anything that's expensive other than the paints, which can add up, spend a lot of dollars for little bits of paint. So other than the paint, and the model kit itself, the most expensive things next would be the brushes. And you want decent quality, not hyper quality, but decent quality, brushes of different sizes, like a 10-0, maybe even a 20-0. And just thinking of what I've spent money on. When I had no money as a kid, what did I spend money on? Paints and brushes. And the other tool I had was a single-edged razor blade, which is a good thing to have. I would recommend, you don't need to buy needle files. They're really handy to have. You don't necessarily really need them. The sandpaper of 600 grit and finer is really pretty important. I would buy that before I'd buy a needle file. You can always use a coarser grade sandpaper, but the needle files are good for getting into like corners and edges and taking down plastic quickly. So sandpaper first. That's much more important. And then a set of needle files, maybe. I guess I would recommend, if you can, getting those little ball bearings or even BBs. You just buy BBs for a BB gun. It's cheaper than going to a model store and getting the little mixing balls that they're called. Put those in each of your bottles or tubes of or containers of paint. The tops come off of these. You can put them in there. That really helps get the paint stirred up. Just thinking of how to spend your money. So yeah, those kinds of things. Then if you want to really do a good job with your models, better than I do even, I would consider investing in a decent airbrush and learning how to use it. Learning how to thin your paints, how to clean it, all of that kind of stuff. Because if you can get good with it, the paint quality of your models is going to look really good. Otherwise, use spray paint like I do. And like I said, your colors might be a little bit limited, but when you're doing large areas like this, the base or the outside of this or something, there's no way you can use a brush on that and not leave brush marks. I mean, even this, like this area here, and even that, you end up with brush marks on. When you're painting minifigs, like I do for Dyson for our Dungeons and Dragons campaign or show, that isn't that important because the surface areas are so tiny that they're almost smaller than a brush mark. You can't. There isn't just a problem with it. Like I'll show you, like her. Okay. I mean, this is all hand. This is brush painted, and using a flat paint, you don't see the brush marks. But there it is. You can do that on the minifigs, but on a model, especially if you're building an airplane, and you got aluminum colored wings and that kind of thing, there's really no choice but to either use an airbrush or spray paint. Now, masking this is kind of important because I've already painted the other side. Okay. And so if I get the white paint on it, then it will be an unhappy situation. And in tears, I don't know. I did invest in this expensive modeling masking tape as opposed to just using like frog tape or painter's tape or something, because it, at least so far, has not ever pulled the paint away from an already painted surface. On the other hand, it's not quite as sticky. And because of that, Okay, that's just got to be cut differently. I'm working around that little hinge pin. Don't want that to be a point of failure here. It's going to cover it. I hope that works. Worst comes to worst, and I get white paint on the blue surface. I believe I can touch that up because the blue is darker than the white and should cover it. I really should have painted the outside of this before, but then I would have gotten blue paint on the white, and well, time will tell. Either this will work okay or it won't, and if it doesn't, then it's always possible to reprime things. I've done that before, where there was a major oops having to do with paint, is clean up the paint as well as one can, get the surfaces smooth again, and reprime it. Start over. And thankfully, if it's like spray paint, it's thin enough. There's not much of it. It doesn't cover up the detail too much. I'm not recommending that. I'm not saying you should make oopses that require you to get rid of the paint that you already put on and start over. I would avoid doing that whenever possible. Compared to getting it done right the first time, there's no upside to making a mistake big enough to require repainting from scratch. I'm just saying that it's possible to do that if you have no alternative. And if you look back on YouTube, you'll find when I was doing the service module that I had that happen on the inside panel of one of the service modules. And when I was doing the lunar module, I had it happen in a huge way, where I had a relatively minor flaw in the paint turn into a relatively huge redo, where basically the entire body of the lunar module ended up having to be, like I said, restarted. So again, it's like, that is definitely not a how-to suggestion. That is if it comes to that, and I hope it doesn't for you, if you ever do this, you can fix it. Especially if you're using acrylic paints. If you're using acrylic paints, you can usually remove them with like isopropyl or denatured alcohol. That's sufficient, and a rough surface cloth, or maybe if you need to, you can use some fine sandpaper to get the last remnants off. Well, hopefully this will work. The masking seems to be okay. And as I said, if I need to, I can get some of that light blue paint and do brush touch-up just around the little spots that are bad. If there are any, it'll be mainly on these edges, because this is covered. I don't have to worry about the detail I painted. It's just the edges. And those should be, those won't show brush marks because they're so tiny. So I'll paint this and then unmask it on Monday and see what I've got. And if I've got what I need, then I can start working on the little window that goes in there. Okay. What am I doing on time? I've got about a half hour. Okay. And I've got tape all over my scissors. Doing little bits of tape with my scissors. I want to talk about Dyson Dungeons a little bit. I need to do some advertising. Dyson Dungeons is a group of family and friends, and we run a Dungeons and Dragons show, and the Dungeons and Dragons show is amazing. It's so amazing that what's our long time ago, be there or be square. I'll say it. Why not? I'm old, I can say that. And I'm looking for a certain color of paint. This one, to be exact. It's called Natal Black, which is a slightly grayish black. I'm going to use that on the brackets, on the conduits here, just to do it. But we run a Dungeons and Dragons show, which is amazing. Our DM has built an incredible homebrew world. We've been playing it for over a year now. We are well developed as characters. We're very funny, except when we're in Mortal Kombat, which happens way more than I'd like. I'm not a real fan of being mostly dead, which my character has done a couple times. And it streams with a live chat on Sundays at 2 Eastern Time, currently Daylight Saving Time, and soon to be Standard Time. That's the time that it does, that the stream is on. And if you can't catch it then, all of the episodes appear on YouTube, or even as a podcast. You can listen to them while you're doing something else. In fact, you can do the YouTube while you're doing something else, because there's almost always talking going on of various and sundry value. Okay, sometimes, we're really funny and entertaining. Sometimes you groan in our humor, but you need to watch them. And this thing, Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons, started painting dungeon tiles and minifigs for our show. And occasionally that still happens, even though we have a lot of dungeon tiles and minifigs that had been prepared in the past. But when I ran out of dungeon tiles and minifigs, then I started working on models that I bought when I retired that have been sitting here not being constructed, because I always found something else to do. But now I was told by our TM that what you need to do is spend, like 4 hours, 3 days a week doing this painting stream and being very compliant. That's what I'm doing. I wanted to paint that, a particular shade of red, and I almost forgot about it. That color out, but now I don't see it anywhere. It's like a red-black. It's a really dark red color. But I think maybe I'll just use scarlet. Not that one. What's up? Use that one all the time. This one. There's this little tank in the back here that I'm going to be painting dark red. Just to do it. Why not? And I'm going to put these back on, because I need to be able to see the tiny little brackets that I'm going to be painting on the base of the command module here. Yeah, this is a little different paint. This is a Tamiya color. We use these giant jars of paint because it's the most cost-effective way of painting large surfaces like dungeon tiles. I hope this looks good, because if not, then I have to repaint it.
I'm going to use the stuff in the cap first. Why not? Use these really teeny brushes. So it doesn't have a size marker on it. One of the ones I was using before was a 10-0. And I think I'm going to buy a 20-0 as well. Because, especially with minifigs, there's just a lot of tiny things, little dots, little stripes. So need to be painted all the time. This is only going to be viewed from one side. This side. So I'm going to turn it and paint it this way. Camera. Yeah, it is. And you can actually even see that I'm putting paint on things. My head's not in the way. These brackets. What was I thinking when I decided to do this? And they're going to be mostly invisible. Say that I'm just really wasting my time and yours. Maybe not yours, because this is actually painting. Painting with Dyson Dungeons at the moment. This has been a rarity with this month. If this is at all visible, it will look better with the brackets painted than if they weren't painted. It's just there's a lot. So yes, Dyson Dungeons is a Dungeons and Dragons show. And as I'm losing my voice, as the congestion is picking up here for a reason unknown, as it always does in the post-break portion of this stream, always becomes a predictable feature, is that the congestion will pick up and I'll start coughing or sneezing or something. But to invite everybody, if you haven't already, either on this stream or not, but just in general, to become a follower of Dyson Dungeons. And YouTube subscriber. I think this is a subscriber on YouTube. It's really bad. And on patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, patreon.com/Dice and Dungeons, you can become a patron. And if you become a patron,
you get access to our DM's notes for each session. She's been publishing the notes that she has used to prepare for each session. And also, before each episode, we do a taped improv. Not taped, it's recorded. Nobody tapes anymore. Why am I even saying that? We record an improv session. It's our warm up. It gets us warmed up so that we are entertaining as all get out on the show. Anyway, as a patron, you get to see those. And sometimes they're just silly, and sometimes they're hilarious. If you're lucky, you'll find the hilarious ones. But you should check those out. They're really kind of cool and fun. Just need to clean the accumulated paint off the tip of the brush there. These little bits here that are very hard to paint are the ones that are actually going to be the most visible. It's unfortunate. They're the hardest to do, and they're going to be the ones that are most likely to be seen. So it goes. The time. I have many things to do today, so I can't really go over. If I don't finish this, I'll just have to finish it on Monday. Then there'll be at least some guaranteed relaxing painting. Monday, as I finish painting the brackets on the conduits in the base that goes under the seats of the command module. Really quite slowly. It's not a surprise. These are tiny little details that for me are, I just need to work slowly. Whereas anybody around the house would tell me, whatever you do slowly. Just kind of true nowadays. Sometimes I go slowly because I'm just, there's lots of reasons for going slowly. Sometimes they have to do with balance. Sometimes they have to do with just having to be really careful. Sometimes it has to do with like carrying things. And those need to be done slowly because I never have it banging into stuff with the things I'm carrying. Anyway, this is going slowly, which is how things usually go. But it's getting done. I have applied paint to surfaces. See? You can see there's brackets and not brackets. It does look better with the brackets painted, I have to say. I did choose the right thing there. I painted the conduits without, looking at them under the 2x, and it's amazing how flaws in the coverage of the paint become visible when they are twice the size of before. That's why anyone from using a magnifying glass and a powerful flashlight, when they look at my models, it's like stand at a respectful distance. You need to be at least 18 inches away, and you just deal with the ambient lighting, whatever it is. It's just the way it's going to be. And then the models look a lot better than if you were looking at them magnifying glass. I'm sure that this was the right idea, but boy, it is taking a while. I still have 15, 20 minutes. If I could say more about Dice and Dungeons. Our D&D show is really, really amazing. Our DM that has not only made an incredibly impressive world for our players to work in, but comes up with the most amazing NPCs in the show. I mean, we don't just run into like kobolds and dragons. Different NPC shopkeepers, family members of the characters in the show, antagonists, allies, and she's created them all with distinct and unique personalities, and she voices them. She's actually a really accomplished voice actress. Hard to describe, okay? But you just have to listen to a couple of episodes and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Really impressive in terms of the voicing of the characters, which makes it, it makes it fun to play, but it makes it even more enjoyable, when you're listening to it as a show. So if nothing else, you should catch it just so you can hear her voice the characters. And then we as players do our utmost to be in character during the entire show. And we do a pretty good job of that. So you can tell if we're in character or not, which is kind of important as you're going through a D&D campaign. So is this the character playing, or is this the player asking a question or something? I think we do an admirable job. It's really good. You just need to just catch a couple of episodes on YouTube, even if you don't go through the entire episode. Get a flavor of it, and if you really like it, then you'll become a regular. Even better, go to patreon.com/DiceandDungeons. Become a patron and help support the show. If you run, one of our sponsors is a tabletop gaming store. That's another thing you could do.
if you want, advertising on our show, you could become a sponsor. Get in our credits and our continue ongoing appearance on the screen during our sessions. From the beginning of each show. If you watched one of them, you would see how that works. So besides just going to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, that's another way, and a very good way to support the show, is to become an ongoing sponsor. Maybe one of our viewers would, see your ad and go, Dyson Dungeons is promoting them. They must be really cool. I better go buy stuff from them. Could happen. I take a chance at missing the opportunity. Became a sponsor, then we would give you the same, probably treat you the same as like a Patreon supporter, and you'd get access to the DM notes and improv sessions. Another thing we started doing that's available to patrons is hot takes from cold reads. We give a prompt to AI, one of the AI things, and we ask it to produce something for us, maybe a script, just something in writing, and then we read it, and then we critique it. And critiquing it is actually a pretty easy thing to do, because what can I say? That you just, go to patreon.com, become a patron, and you can experience experience the hot takes from cold reads on yourself, and then you'll understand certainly why Dyson Dungeons, oh, geez, I was doing so well. Missed the brush slipped. Got a black spot right there. 2/3 of the way done, and or at least halfway done, and happened. You get a little bit of that paint, that light blue paint, and touch that up. I think, yeah, that's in a spot that's going to show when it's put together. That was unfortunate. And there's one there too. I didn't see it. It's on the silver. But anyway, hot takes from cold reads has become a feature available to our patrons, and it's actually, it's not as hilarious as our warm-ups, but it's kind of fun. It's fun to find out, to listen to what AI thinks of Dungeons and Dragons, and more specifically, our group. We have actually experienced an AI hallucination during it makes things up that don't exist in our campaign or our group, and then persists. It AI can create its own reality.
We've experienced that. It's really weird. It'll just make something up, add it to our lore, essentially, and then insist that it's real. Didn't expect that to happen, but it did. And yeah, if you become a patron, you can get access to that sequence of hot takes from cold reads and witness the creation of AI's alternate reality and its persistent belief in itself. Yeah. So you get tired here at the end of this. Trying to focus enough so that I don't make another couple of oopses like I already have. Even if they're tiny little dots. I mean, dots that are barely visible. They're visible enough. There's a little dot in the wrong spot, in the wrong color. It needs to be fixed. I can't fix that today. I don't have that color of paint with me. It's upstairs. But I need to remember that it's there. I can fix the spot on the silver. There's enough time. Otherwise, I'll take care of it on Monday. The spot on the silver is, still going to be visible. Of course, if there's going to be a slip of the brush, it's going to be in one of the very few places that anybody's actually going to be able to see this when this is assembled. How could it be otherwise? This is, without the magnifiers, this would probably be B level work. With the magnifiers, it's B minus, definitely not A. I think if you can see any of this going on camera, it probably looks okay. The brackets, yeah. I mean, at that distance on camera, it kind of looks all right. So in terms of how this will eventually actually be seen, it's coming okay. And I'm glad that I decided to paint the brackets, even though it's taking time and it's kind of a pain. They do look a lot better with, this looks a lot better with the brackets not being the same color as the conduit. Looks like I may be able to. I've got like 4 left if I don't rush. Should make a mess. But I stay at the slow and steady pace. I should actually be able to finish these during this stream. And then it's just the cleaning up, the touch up that needs to be done. I suppose, it would have been possible maybe if I got a toothpick with a paper towel on it that I could have gotten that spot off of the blue paint. But it's also quite possible that if I tried to do that, I would just smear it around and make an even bigger mess. than that tiny little dot. Impressed by the flaws in the paint on the card. I painted them under magnification. Now that I'm looking at it after it dried, it's impressively not good. Surprised by. Maybe you should be surprised too, is that I can actually hold my hand as steady as I am to do this kind of detail painting. You're impressed by that or not? Why not? You should be. At your age, what do you think you're doing here? I think I'm doing relaxing painting with Dyson Tungent. What does it look like I'm doing? Give this a quick look from this angle to catch spots that just didn't get painted or the reflection is wrong or something. Especially in the spots that are likely to be visible once this thing is assembled. Yep. Too bad. Kind of okay with how it's turning out. Things where I want a tiny dot of paint and I just can't get the brush right, and it could end up being a mistake. Spots that could actually be visible. Too much paint, but better than not having the paint. Not perfect, but it's not bad. Give it one more look, and then say, mess with this anymore, and it's going to be a problem. Okay, I'm going to cap this up. I'm going to very quickly get, I think I used, chainmail silver. There's a little spot where I hit the chainmail silver with the black paint. And I'm just going to see if got one tiny spot where there's black paint on the blue paint, and I need to correct that at some point. Okay, I'm going to be wrapping up here. It is time to end this episode of Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. I will be back on Monday. I will have spray painted some stuff so that they will be ready for unmasking and remasking in the case of a couple of them, and detail painting in the case of one of them, and window installation in the case of yet another. So there's a bunch of stuff that can be done, that will be done on Monday, that has to do with painting and masking and getting ready for some assembly. I've got some other pieces that I need to prep, the instrument panels, and there's a story around that I will tell on Monday in terms of what's going to be happening there. But I want to thank everybody who joined in today. Thanks for joining in on chat. Thanks for being a follower. Thanks for being a subscriber. Thanks for being a patron. All of that is much, much appreciated. And that came out okay. I think looking at it at this distance under this kind of lighting, it's not perfect, but it's okay. It came out all right. Going to be looking at it, just to give you an example, if you want to see, be looking at it through this hatch. Okay. That's the view one gets of everything I just did, except there's other stuff in the way in front of it. So I don't know, most of it probably will be maybe it'll be totally invisible. I keep forgetting that one bit. So I need the light blue. On Monday, I'll get rid of the dot that I made right there. I think you can even see it. There's a dot right there of paint that got on the blue that's likely to be visible. And then this tank back there just needs to be painted this color. So I'll do that on Monday and work on the door and work on the parachute set thing, the place where the parachutes are stored. So thanks, everybody. I will be back Monday at more or less 10, continuing to work on the Apollo command module. Hopefully making pretty good progress. We will see. See you then.